Hello, YouTube! Today I wanted to talk about an obscure basketball set from the 1960s that isn't still really well known in a lot of collecting circles because it's very rare and they were never meant to actually exist in the public. But in 1968, Topps was starting to think about getting the licenses to start producing NBA cards once again. If you remember from one of my previous videos, I talked about how after the 1957 Topps set, they decided not to do basketball sets again for a while. And between 1957 and 1969, the only really basketball set you had, of course, was the 1961 Fleer set. So in between, you had no NBA cards being produced whatsoever. But in 1967, 1968, Topps was considering getting back into the basketball card set business once again. And of course, they would eventually come out with their very famous 1969-1970 Tall Boy basketball set. But before that, at least what is assumed is that they created these test cards. They're labeled as 1968, 1969, although there's a lot of fight back about when they actually were created. A lot of people have suggested they were actually probably created in 1967, 1968. But regardless, whether it's 1967, 1968, or whatever, these unique cards were created, I guess, as a way to sort of test their ability once again to create basketball cards. Whether it was showing the NBA and the NBA Players Association these test cards to let them know, yes, we're capable of doing NBA cards again and making them look good. And so here are some test cards to prove that theory, or just to kind of prove to themselves internally that they were ready to start producing basketball cards again. Regardless, this set obviously didn't go out into the public, and it's not really known the reasons why they never actually were produced for public distribution. Maybe there were some negotiations that fell through with the NBA and NBAPA during that year, or they just didn't like the way the set came out in the end or something and decided to scrap that set and just kind of redo and redesign. And obviously, when you look at the 1969-1970 Tall Boy set and you see how different it is from this test set, maybe that was the reason why they just didn't do this 68 sets on a public scale. But for whatever reason, they scrapped this set and didn't produce it for public distribution. However, what has occurred, or what started occurring around the 1990s, was some previous Topps executives that no longer worked with the company, but took a lot of these cards out with them that they still had, sitting in their office or sitting in their desk or whatever. They took them with them when they started retiring or leaving Topps, and for the first time, sometime in the 1990s, they started seeing the light of day to hobbyists and to the public in general. So it's a really interesting thing that, like, for over 20 years, no one really knew that these things existed except for very few people who previously worked for Topps. So in the 90s, more of these cards started seeing the light of day, and it started becoming a little bit more well known about what these cards were and why they were unique and why they were rare. And of course, this is about the time that PSA was coming into frame, and so when they started coming out in the 90s, a lot of them started going directly to PSA to get graded and authenticated. But still, to this day, there are still not very many of these cards that have made it out and exist. Apparently, at first, it was said to have been maybe as little as 80 that surfaced during the first couple of decades, and a little more have come out since then. But still, all in all, only 208 total cards have come out and have been authenticated by PSA as of today. And this was a set that included 22 total cards. And what's also really interesting and unique about this set is the fact that almost every single one of these players were the cream of the crop players, obviously, of that time period. And so they were pretty much all Hall of Famers in this set. And several of these cards actually predate what is considered their true rookie card from the 1969-1970 top set. So players like Willis Reed and John Havlicek, Hall of Fame players that are considered some of the greatest players to ever play the NBA, they actually have rookie cards in the 68 Topps test set that are kind of considered, extended rookie cards because they actually predate their what's considered true rookie cards from 69-70. But still, yeah, to this date, only 208 total of these cards is known to have come out in the public and have been authenticated by PSA. There may be some others out there that just haven't been authenticated yet. No one really knows because no one's going to probably deal these cards without getting them authenticated first. Because there were definitely instances where these cards were reproduced and reprinted once they became well known, and started selling for a good amount of money because they were very rare, and really true NBA card collecting enthusiasts were starting to really seek out these cards around the 2000s and 2010s for sure. So there may be more out there. We don't know exactly, but it doesn't seem like if there are more out there, that there are going to be very many more out there than what's already been graded. Just within the past 10 years, I don't think the population count of these cards has risen by more than 20 to 30 at the most. So within a decade, you don't see very many of these cards pop up, new versions of these cards pop up at all. So needless to say, I think that we're about where we are in terms of how many total of these cards exist out there in the world, which is a little over 200. So thinking about that, there are about 25 cards or 22 cards in this set, and only 200, a little over 200 total of these exist. In fact, it was, it was kind of an urban legend that the Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain card in the set didn't actually exist for the longest time. For the longest time, no one ever saw card number 4, which was Bill Russell's card, and no one had ever actually seen the Will Chamberlain card, which is card number 1. And so a lot of people actually maybe thought that maybe they never actually printed those cards. Maybe they just don't exist. Well, they finally came out in the light of day several years ago. Now there are 8 total Bill Russell cards that are known to exist that are out there, and 11 total Will Chamberlain cards. And just think about that. Only 8 Bill Russell and only 11 Will Chamberlain total. The total pop report of those cards. That's it. So if you have a Bill Russell, super collector out there that's trying to get his or her hands on this card for their super collection, there's only 8 out there that exists. There's only 8 possible chances to ever get this card ever. So the price demands for these cards, especially for those big cards, the Russell, the Wilt, and some of these other Hall of Famers, like I said, that actually predate some of their first cards that ever existed, they can command a pretty significant price point, even at a low grade. And once again, like the Will Chamberlain card, the highest grade is a PSA 8. There's only 2 known copies of a PSA 8 of that card, period. I don't know when the last sale of any of those Will Chamberlain PSA 8s ever happened. I've been unable to find that information doing looking up online. I haven't been able to figure that out. So yeah, there are some So who knows where some of these numbers are right now? Who knows what the Will Chamberlain PSA 8 can go for right now, and who knows what the actual complete set would actually go for if it actually gets to one of these big auctions here in the near future. But anyway, so uh, this is such a, like I said, interesting, unique set in that these were never meant to see the light of day in public, but eventually they did down the road, 25 or so odd years after that they were created. So they're obviously they're extremely rare, like we talked about, and just kind of, you know, still a little under the radar when people talk about some of the more unique, interesting, or expensive cards and sets that exist out there in basketball cards. There's still a lot of unknown, or there's still a lot of people who don't really know too much about this set. And there's still a lot of mystery just about the set in itself. Like, there's still mystery as to when they actually were created. There's still a mystery as to how many total number of these cards actually got out of the Topps, headquarters or whatever that actually exist out there in the public. And for a while, there was even a lot of mystery as to who exactly was in this set and who, how many, like, were there actual cards made of Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain in this set, for instance. So I find this set very interesting. And yeah, you usually you will not see these come up for sale hardly ever, like maybe a couple times a year. Um, on the big auction houses, and when you do, don't be surprised when you see that big number that it'll wind up going for, because the true collectors, the people who truly know about these cards and why they're worthy of such a high price point because of their rarity, they will bid high numbers for these cards for sure. So I just wanted to talk about this set for a little bit today and give you guys a little bit of knowledge about them. So go out and Google and do some research on this set. There's a lot of interesting nuggets about the history of this set. And yeah, feel free to comment below if you have any questions about it or just have any general knowledge that you'd like to share about this 1968 Topps test set. And thank you so much for watching.